right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gina Ford. I'm Communications Director for Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. As you know, the county has experienced some uptick in crime, particularly over the month of August. So today, the county executive and the chief are here to bring some information for the community, as well as some additional strategies. So first, we will hear from County Executive Angela Alsobrooks, followed by Police Chief Malik Aziz, and finally, Council Chair Calvin Hawkins.
Good morning. I want to thank everyone for coming out this morning, and most especially want to thank Police Chief Malik Aziz, as well as members of our department who are with us here this morning. I'd also like to thank both the chair and vice chair of the county council, as well as other county council members who have come to join us this morning. I'd also like to thank our media partners who came at a moment's notice, as well as our residents who are tuning in and who have already begun to communicate with us regarding this important update. As you can imagine, this is not quite how we expected to communicate with you all today during Labor Day weekend, but over the past few weeks, we have really come to a critical juncture in our county, and I believe that it was critical to address you today. In short, we have an accountability problem in our county. And I have heard from many of you in the community who are asking, rightfully so, what I am doing to address the rise in violent crime that we have seen in our county. Again, it is a reasonable question, but to be clear, I want everyone to understand that I control one part of this system, and I will discuss what we are doing as a government to address the part of the criminal justice system that we do oversee, and I'll explain the basics. The criminal justice system is made of the police, who make arrests, the prosecutor, who is the gatekeeper for the criminal justice system to determine who to hold accountable and what to charge, and then we have the courts that in many instances will make the final determination on accountability. So in short, there is a whole system at play, which starts with the police and ends with the courts and prosecution. And what's clear to us, and I know that I don't speak rocket science, it ought to be clear to everyone, something is not working. The chief will talk about this shortly, but we are arresting and re-arresting the same children and adults who are committing crimes in our community. For example, we have 61 adult carjacking arrests that we have made so far this year. Of those, 45 have prior arrest and 40 have a prior arrest for a crime of violence or firearm possession, and 9 have prior arrest for carjackings. We've seen a wave of crime this summer across the region and here in Prince George's County, and you should know, and I believe that this is absolutely astounding, that August was the single deadliest month in Prince George's County's history. We have had over 350 carjackings this year, which represents a 52% increase over just last year. And just to give you context for that number, we had 91 carjackings in 2019. And so we have seen that number escalate every single year until we are at a point now where we have 350 this year. We're finding that each year, not only do we have more carjackings, but each year we're also arresting more juveniles. So it's clear that the problem is what happens after the arrest, or in our case, what doesn't happen. Over the past year, I have held for all of you multiple press conferences and even held a crime summit in April and promised to put the entire force of this government behind this issue. I promised that we would put forward every resource that we had to combat the rise in violent crime and invest in our youth who deserve to be protected. I promised that every child who applied for a job would get one this summer through our Summer Youth Enrichment Program, and we did just that. We employed over 6,000 youth between the ages of 16 and 22 just this summer. I promised you as well that each child who applied for a position in the Alsobrooks Summer Passport Experience would also have an opportunity to receive enrichment in dozens of fields. We did just that, and we gave those opportunities to over 1,000 youth this summer. We recognized as well that mental health issues were driving some of the crime that we've been experiencing both among our youth and adults. So we opened a new mental health care facility and addictions care facility this year, the first of its kind to ever open in Prince George's County. And we have plans as well to further expand health services in the county. We also started, and I want to thank Pastor Tony Lee, I have seen him here this morning, but we started the Hope in Action program with over a dozen nonprofit partners as a part of our Hope Collective, providing wraparound services to youth and young adults to include mental health services, after-school programming, mentoring, reentry services, and more. And so I could go on and on and on, but the fact of the matter is we have spared no expense or resource at trying to address the issue of violent crime in our county. And in fact, we've seen some progress in our efforts. Before August came, we were down 30% in homicides in Prince George's County, 30%. And even with the horrible month that we had in August, we are still down 15% in terms of where we were last year. But the truth of the matter is we are still seeing concerning levels of crime. And far too often, we're seeing that many of the carjackings that we have experienced in our community are being perpetrated by children. Juvenile arrests have more than doubled from this time last year. Our officers have arrested an eye-popping 430 kids. Of the 84 juveniles arrested for carjacking so far this year, 55 of those juveniles have prior offenses. 34 had prior gun or violent crimes, and a half of all of those kids who we have arrested for carjackings were under 15 years old. Now we can sit here and we can talk statistics all day long, but I want to reiterate that these are children committing these crimes, targeting other children and targeting adults. Armed and dangerous children. Those are two very, very difficult words for me to even put together. Armed and dangerous children. Over the past year, every time that I've promised to put every government resource that we've had behind this issue to help our kids, I have also reinforced the fact that it is no different today, and that is that the government alone cannot solve this problem. We need every piece of our system working together to include our community. So today, I am going to just put it very bluntly. Somebody has got to take responsibility for these armed and dangerous children, and it is not just the police and not just the government. Just bluntly put. We have children who are out in our communities at 3 and 4 o'clock a.m. committing these crimes. No summer job or government program is going to help that. I get the question asked all the time, well, what are you going to do? But if you're out at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning at 14, carjacking and committing armed robberies, that is not a fact that the resources are not there. So we can't continue to throw resources to fix that kind of problem. But at this point, these kids don't just need a hug, they also need to be held accountable. I know this isn't the popular thing to say, but the truth of the matter is, it's a fair question. Where are their parents? Where are the aunties? Where are the uncles and other family members who are responsible for them? We have thrown government resources at this matter, and we'll be continuing to do so. But we're also requesting an emergency meeting with the Department of Juvenile Services and continuing to work collaboratively with the court system to understand how these kids are being held accountable. But hear me when I say they must be held accountable. As county executive, it is my job to create and fund programs that we've created to tackle this issue. It's also my job to fund the police department and ensure that they are doing their jobs well. But we would also like for the courts, for the Department of Juvenile Services to release to the public their numbers on outstanding cases and dispositions. We'd like the prosecutor's office to release its pending cases and dispositions. And we want the police department to publish as well its arrest numbers on a public dashboard. We need our entire criminal justice system to act in full public transparency so that we can tackle this issue together. In the meantime, I think it's critical that we have a cooling off period. So we will begin enforcing an existing curfew law that will begin to take effect this upcoming weekend for at least the next 30 days. That means that unless an exception applies, youth under the age of 17 must be at home between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 11:59 and 5 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays. And otherwise, they must be accompanied by an adult. There are several steps of enforcement, beginning with a warning and a parent or guardian who is not notified. And if a parent doesn't respond or fails to respond regarding their child, the child will be released to social services. Parents and owners of establishments who allow youth to remain on premises during times where they should be at home will face fines including $50 for a first offense, $100 for a second offense, and $250 for subsequent offenses. And this is all in the law. This is not something that I am making up. This is all current Maryland law. Simply put, the enforcement of this law is to protect our children. Children 17 years old and younger are not legally responsible for themselves. Neither are police. Their parents are responsible and their families are responsible for keeping them safe. We need everyone working to protect our children. We can make an arrest and make arrest after arrest after arrest, but after that, it's out of the police department's hand. Again, where are the parents of kids who are out carjacking at 3 a.m. in the morning? And let me be clear, the government is doing its part and will continue to do so, and we will spare no resource in terms of combating violent crime. Chief Aziz will talk a bit more about the efforts of our police department to combat crime. And again, we could continue to spend resources on this issue, but until people start being held accountable, we're not going to fully be able to tackle this issue in our community. We need everyone to step up and do their part. And again, we don't need just hugs, just warnings, but the people who are committing these acts of violence in our community now need to be held accountable, and face consequences for absolutely terrorizing our community. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Chief Aziz.
I have a question because,
Sir, excuse me, this press conference is not concluded. We will allow the chief to speak first. Questions will be taken at the end.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Madam County Executive. I want to thank you for gathering us here today to talk about an important issue. I also want to thank the county chair and the council chair and the county vice chair and the honorable council members who are in attendance today, as well as my command team who's standing behind me, and for their exemplary leadership for Prince George's County Police Department. This is an important conversation. On behalf of the women and men of the Prince George's County Police Department, this entire agency is a committed partner in the overall effort to protect and serve the residents of Prince George's County. I'm going to start today by offering the community a brief overview of crime statistics so far this year. We are coming out of a particularly challenging month of August in terms of homicides. There were 24 murders that the PGPD investigated this month of August, the last month of August. It is the highest numbers in 1 month in over 3 decades. That number is simply unacceptable. There are 24 people who will not come home to their families, leaving 24 families shattered, devastated. Of those 24 murders, we've solved 13, and we seek the community's support in solving the remainder of all homicides that have occurred in this county. So far this year, PGPD has investigated 80 murders. Despite the recent troubling increase, last year at this time, there were 89 murders. In terms of non-fatal shootings so far this year, PGPD, we are investigating 211 contact or non-fatal shootings. That is where a victim has survived his or her injuries. And last year, there were 209 at this time. That's over 400 shootings that have happened in our county in a year and 9 months. The Prince George's County Police Department and its dedicated officers are working around the clock to stem this tide of violence. At the end of August, our officers and detectives have recovered 1,169 guns. That's more than 150 additional guns recovered from this time last year. We've arrested 833 individuals for gun-related offenses this year alone. That's 833. 126 adults have been arrested in 2022 for gun possession and have more than one gun arrest. 15 of these adults have 3 gun charges. In 2021, there were 941 arrests. In 2020, there were 963 arrests. That's over 2,700 arrests for illegal gun possession in this county. These individuals should not be allowed to continue to reoffend and further victimize our residents, oftentimes using unserialized guns. The magnitude of that problem, in 2016 alone, we found 1 unserialized weapon, what you know as ghost guns. In 2017, there were only 4. 2018, 17. 2019, 27. 2020, 164. 21, 252. And so far this year, with 4 months remaining, that's 237. Carjackings are another area of concern. In 2019, there were 91 carjackings. In 2020, 262. 2021, 391. So far this year, there have been 355 reported carjackings. That's up more than 40% from last year. So far in 2022, our carjacking interdiction unit has arrested 61 adults, and 45 have had prior arrests, and 9 have had prior arrests for carjacking. Our officers have arrested 84 juveniles for carjackings. That's juveniles carjacking, taking a weapon and putting it to someone and taking their vehicle. 55 of those juveniles have prior arrests. 34 have a prior arrest for violent crimes. Again, juveniles, like adults, need to truly be held accountable so that they cannot continue to victimize our residents. Crimes committed by juveniles are on the rise in Prince George's County. You've heard Madam County Executive give those numbers. This agency has made 438 juvenile arrests already this year. That's a significant jump from 207 juvenile arrests in 2021. 8 juveniles have been charged with homicides. What's also deeply troubling are the numbers of juveniles we are repeatedly arresting. Here are just a few stats to paint that picture. 15 juveniles arrested in 2022 for gun possession have been arrested for guns in the past. 3 of them have been arrested for carrying guns 4 times. 3 of them have been arrested 3 times. The other 9, twice. I must say that the vast numbers of juveniles are out doing the right thing and living a meaningful and positive life in Prince George's County. These are the outliers that are causing our residents to fear so much crime in our own neighborhoods. Those numbers involving juveniles are shocking. They're shocking to me. They certainly are shocking to our community. They should be shocking to everyone who hears them. The PGPD is committed to working with the community, our county executive, and our dedicated team, along with county agencies, to hold these juveniles accountable, or anyone who is committing an offense within the boundaries of Prince George's County. But we can't do this alone, and we can't arrest our way out of this. We tried that once upon a time. So we need a total solution. We all collectively support the vast majorities of juveniles in this county, again, who are doing the right thing every day. And we are equally committed to holding those accountable who commit the most violent of crimes, holding them accountable so they don't have the opportunity to reoffend, commit another crime. Before I wrap up, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the 4 homicides that occurred in our investigative jurisdiction this weekend. On Saturday night, a 15-year-old from Washington, D.C. was shot and killed at a convenience store in Capitol Heights. There were a total of 4 people shot during that incident, to include another 15-year-old who is in critical condition at this very moment, fighting for their life. 2 adults were also shot. their injuries aren't considered life-threatening. Our homicide unit is actively working to identify the two shooters. At this point, this does not appear to be a robbery attempt or a random incident. Investigators are looking into whether any of those individuals in the store were targeted by the shooters. On Sunday morning, a woman was shot and killed in Fraser Terrace in Temple Hills. This was a domestic-related shooting, and we've made an arrest in that case. Later on Sunday, there was a fatal shooting in the town of Bladensburg. An adult male was shot and killed on 58th Avenue. Investigators are collecting evidence in this case, and we're also working to identify and arrest the shooter or shooters. Preliminarily, it does not appear to be a random shooting. And early this morning, another fatal shooting occurred on 23rd Avenue in Lewisdale area. The victim was outside in the parking lot with other individuals when the shooting occurred. Investigators are working to determine the circumstances surrounding this case. As with all homicides, there's a reward up to $25,000 available for information through our Crime Solvers program. We remain committed to working with all of our criminal justice partners and being transparent throughout this entire process. It is necessary that we be unified. It is required. We want to reassure our residents that we're doing our part in this 50-50 partnership that results in a better and safer Prince George's County. No one should have to tolerate living in fear of being a victim of crime in your own neighborhood, and our neighborhoods where we live, where we work, where our children play, where we entertain. And we will do our part to own our community. In closing, I'd like to thank the men and women of the Prince George's County Police Department for their exhausted efforts in serving our residents. I know how hard you are all working, and your efforts are commendable. I also would like to thank our community partners, such as Pastor Lee to my right for the Hope Collective, for doing the things in our community that are necessary and stepping up. We stand ready to partner with anyone in any positive effort to protect all Prince Georgians. I stand with you. Thank you.
The County Council stands with the County Executive at this time, and we are so grateful to your decisive action to establish a juvenile curfew. That's where my comments end for what was prepared for me. As the chair of the County Council and a citizen of this county, it's really time to ask the question, who and why are individuals, whether they're young or old, are on our county streets after committing repeated crimes? There's a police reform going throughout this country and in this county. The men and women of the Prince George's County Police Department are putting their lives on the line each and every day to ensure our streets are safe. Whether it's our courts, whether it's our state's attorney, whether it's the county council, whether it's the county executive, someone has to ask the question, who is allowing these individuals to return to our street? Yes, we can say little Johnny and little Lisa are so nice, but if they're perpetrating crimes that are impacting the community we have to live in, enough is enough. To my colleagues in the judicial branch, I want you to understand one thing. Our county charter allows this county council to have oversight powers, and we are going to exercise those powers to get to the bottom of what's going on. And to some of you judges who are letting these individuals out, you're going to have to deal with this county council, because we don't want you presiding over those kind of cases that are putting perpetrators on the street that are increasing the crime in our community. I stand as the chair of the county council. I'm Calvin Hawkins, and I support what I just said. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, we will take questions from members of the press. Go ahead, Stephanie.
For the county executive, please, yes. What evidence are you basing this curfew on?
Well, you know, we just outlined for you that, for example, this was the single deadliest August in the county's history. And I also shared with you some of the numbers regarding juvenile crime, in particular in the area of carjackings. If we think about carjackings alone, and the fact that we have arrested this year 438 juveniles, at least double what we saw last year, I believe that it is appropriate to do a number of things. So in other words, the curfew is just one tool in the toolbox, and we are employing various strategies and using those strategies to help us in a comprehensive way protect children and to protect our community. So the curfew is done as much to protect youth as it is to curb crime. I cannot stand by and continue to watch children who are shot and killed, who are not only committing crimes but harming others and do nothing about it. And so out of protection for these children who have no business, by the way, on a street anyway, after 10 p.m. On a weeknight, we now are asking their family members to take responsibility for them, to take them into a safe space where they will not be harmed, not be exposed to harm. And we are also employing other strategies at the same time. And so in other words, we are working, for example, with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission to make sure that we have recreation centers that will be open throughout the county. I have given a charge to the director of our Department of Family Services, Social Services, to make sure that we are also providing wraparound services throughout for these young people. Making sure that if they show up at one of these recreation centers and we notice, for example, that there is an issue that social services can jump in and help with, they're going to be providing that help. And so we're going to be working with the school system, social services, and others. So this is just a comprehensive approach. But the truth of the matter, again, is the children who are 17 years old and younger are not legally responsible for themselves. Somebody is responsible for them.
I ask that because you pointed out yourself, we've been here with you for 2 years, asking if you've been also putting all the programs out there that you are trying to address this.
Well,
What
actually,
makes you think that this
well, actually, we haven't been here for 2
Is there
years.
any
The point of the matter is, I'm answering. The point of the matter is, we haven't been here for 2 years. We're seeing an escalating problem. So what I've described to you is this year, we've seen that number increase by over 40%. And we have put in place measures all along the way. The summer jobs program, the mental health facility that I told you about. I created an Alsobrooks passport program. We have created funding to make sure that we have additional mental health services in our school system. And so what I'm telling you is there's a continuum of tools that we're using. And again, I'm not new to this. I was a prosecutor for 13 years, so I know exactly what I'm looking at. But we are using a continuum of tools to address the issue, and this is just the latest tool in the toolbox. And so it is, but we have not, these numbers are getting worse. I'm telling you that in 2019, we had 91 carjackings. We are now sitting in 2022 with 355, and many of those individuals, what I'm telling you is this is a whole system. The government is doing what it can, but you can't arrest and release and have these young people back out into our community and have them be safe, and to have the people who are experiencing these crimes be safe. And so
And
we're.
this emergency meeting with DJS, why wasn't this requested earlier?
Oh, I have met with DJS.
So
Yes.
the emergency meeting, when was the last meeting?
Well, you know what? So the last meeting we had was a few months ago. Barry Stanton can tell us when that. We've been in conversation with them, and what I heard was that we saw some improvement, and now we're seeing it go backwards. So we're going to meet again to ask them about what measures are being taken to make sure that the kids are being helped. And since you're asking the question, what I'm hearing very bluntly, police are saying two things. They're saying they arrest kids who say to them, "You're wasting my time. Let me hurry up and get out of here because nothing is going to happen to me." And so there is a whole culture of fearlessness that is developing because the kids believe that nothing will happen to them. And so we have to address that issue with them. And we also are hearing that there are occasions where our officers pick up youth and try to take them to a facility, and they are refusing to accept the children. We are having difficulty having children held who are committing armed carjackings and armed robberies, that they're being sent back home. And so these are questions we need answers to.
Scott?
Could you describe for me whether or not there's communication occurring now? For instance, weekly meetings where you sit down, look at warrant service, different agencies all together, identify individuals to target, things like
I
that.
can have the
These
chief.
are strategies that have occurred in the past. I'm unclear whether post-COVID these sit down with DHS once a week, identify individuals to serve warrants on acceptance. Help us with that, please.
So the chief can talk to you about what they're doing with the Department of Juvenile Services.
Well, let me address part of that. Yes, we have had regular meetings. My staff, who you see behind me, they have regular conversations dealing with these issues almost daily, certainly weekly, talking about the issues that have compounded or compressed us into inaction in a broken system. And we're only one equation, one input of that. So many months ago, going as far back when we identified this problem here, as far back as May of 2021. Subsequently, after that, DCOA, Mr. Stanton, who's sitting here to my right, and the county executive, pushed for meetings to happen. Those were the first meetings that had occurred in many, many, many years, is what I understand. And from that point on, we've worked to address those specific issues that have been problematic for our officers who are making arrests and going through the system. And then what they're seeing is the frustration after that. They're still working because we have professionals who are trying to deliver a professional police service, and they're increasingly becoming frustrated because they call it catch and release. You heard the county executive, she said arrest and release. These repeated offenders that many of my guys know by name, they know who they are, not even here, across the line in other jurisdictions, that this is well known to us. And only so long can you have police going through a system where they continually arrest and bring people back around in a circle to release to further victimize residents of our county. So we are working, and we are continuously working, and we call on these in a unified way internally, from my office up to the DCAO, all the way up to the CEO and the county executive.
Has the pendulum swung too far? We're dealing with post-code police reform, an emphasis on decriminalizing juvenile behavior in schools, the school-to-prison pipeline. All of these things are happening, and you have these numbers now. Has the pendulum swung too far?
Well, you asking the police chief, has a pendulum swung too far? I'm standing here talking to you right now. Of course it has to me, that we are over where we need to be. We need to address it in a unified way, in a way that we are partners and that we are equal and that we are transparent with what we are doing in the system. Too often, the police are the directed of all criminal issues. It starts with us and stops with us. That's too much TV. That's movie time. The reality of that is we have issues that are going. Police officers are doing their part to make sure that our county is safe. We pass the baton in those systems, but the equal measure of transparency and accountability does not seem to come to the officers that I hear from, who tell me this every single chance that they get in roll calls. What are we doing? Will they be held accountable? What happened with this case? We didn't know about it. It got dismissed. I was over here. All of these questions come to me as if we are the starting and ending point of this criminal justice system. So you're asking me, have the pendulum swung too far? I may differ from my colleagues or my peers, but I believe that we are across that point, and we need to do something to bring it the other way, because our residents do not want to tolerate crime. They do not want to be victims. I've been out on community walks. I was out with a walk with the vice chair here, and people at that march said, I'm afraid to go get gas. I'm afraid to go to the convenience store. So if you're asking me if the pendulum has swung too far, maybe you should ask them if the pendulum has swung too far. I believe they would agree with me.
Brad.
Are you guys specifically calling out the philosophy of State's Attorney Braveboy, of Judge Kelo? Is that what you're talking about here today?
Why are they not here?
I don't know what the philosophy is, but what I can tell you is, and again, this is something that has to happen collaboratively. What I'm saying to you is it's an all system. It has to be an all system solution. And absolutely, it has to be the case that the police have to be at the table, the state's attorney's office has to be at the table, the Department of Juvenile Services has to be at the table, the court system has to be at the table in order for this to be resolved. And that's what we're saying, is that it has to be a collaborative effort. We are making the arrests, and I think the public has to understand that. And we are, again, we're working based on numbers. This is data that tells us everything we need to know about this picture, that we are, again, arresting X number of individuals, and many of those individuals do have prior offenses.
Denise?
Yes, thank you. Chief, you mentioned that, that about accountability, that it seems to start with the police department and ends with the police department. If someone can explain how this curfew will be implemented, will that be another responsibility of the police department to execute
Well,
the?
Well, let me say this, because I think what you're asking is, we've been here before with the curfew, and the re-implementation of a curfew, the police are going to do our part and try to do it better with what we did before. The components and the support of it, we believe that we have to carry out any order, any directive that comes in the realm of what we're supposed to do already. The law provides for us some direction with it. We follow our protocol and our policies, and we believe we're going to be able to meet that out in some form or fashion. As far as the specifics, then this may be a more holistic approach from what the county executive is directing.
So Denise, I think I understand what you're asking. You're asking about how will the resources be impacted if police are already working. This is a law that's already on the books. And so this is not a new law. We last saw that this curfew we strongly enforced in 1995. We feel that the facts and circumstances warrant us doing so again. But the truth is this: we need family members to step up and do their part. That's how we're saying that with many of our young people. That's how we got here in the first place. This is not something to further burden our police services. Again, if you have a child under 17, and it's 10 p.m., we're asking family members to make sure that child is not unaccompanied after that time and out in the community. We don't believe that it is safe for children to do that. We want to provide better protection for these children, and the people that we are asking to protect children are their families. That's who has the best ability to protect them.
Derek?
What sort of teeth are here? You might have explained this earlier when you talked about the curfew. Is there accountability, some sort of statutory accountability for family members, parents, guardians, if there are violations?
So the law does outline already. Again, this is not something we're creating. This is simply a Maryland law that we're enforcing, and it does provide penalties. On the first offense, it's a warning to parents. And then after that, the penalties increase, go up to $100, $200, and then the child is also directed to social services, to the Department of Social Services. And again, I want to reiterate something. We are working on this together as a community. This is not us against parents. We're saying everyone has a role to play in terms of the solution here. The government has a role to play, which I've outlined for you, the ways that we're continuing to work. We know that the court system has a role to play and families have a role to play. So this is not us against parents. We have to work together to protect their children.
Yeah, Marie, you last.
I understand that you guys have established the whole collective. Is that working? Is there any data showing that it's helping reduce crime in any way?
Yes. Well, prior to August, as I explained to you, we were down 30% in terms of homicides. And that was as a result of some of the strategies that we had already put in place. The Summer Crime Initiative. Again, we told you that we funded the Summer Jobs Program, hired every single child who applied, got a job. We've been working on some mental health, providing additional mental health services. We now open that new mental health and addictions care facility, which, by the way, provides even urgent care and emergency services for children as young as 4 years old, where you can bring in. So we have seen some results, but what we're seeing is that some of the other areas, especially those areas involving youth and adults, that we still have room. And so that's the reason that we are, again, making sure that we're not letting up, and we are using every tool available to us to attack the problem.
That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Hawkins?
Oh, that was a bullshit
Mr. Hawkins,
ass,
you used some
Oh,
strong
see.
language. What are you talking about?
Say that again.
You used some very strong language about holding people accountable. Who were
You
you
asked
talking
a
to?
So she's just
question
gonna leave
about
after
the
just
state's
not saying
attorney and the
anything
judge.
different?
Can you go in front of the mic, sir?
You asked a question about the state's attorney and the judge you
And why she
named.
isn't here?
I tell you, my answer is affirmative. Yes, that's who I was speaking about.
Is that why she's not here? The state's attorney? County Executive Alsobrooks, for a while you said that you were able to reduce crime as the state's attorney. How come you haven't been able to do it now? You can smell. I know, and that's exactly what you use in order to get reelected. So, what are your policies? What are you actually going to do to help the people in this county who are grieving, who are tired of your BS?